Some people enter prison and never come out. High walls, maximum security, iron bars, and watchful guards. A place where freedom is nothing more than a distant dream. But what if someone decided to change that? Think about it. You're locked up with no way out, sentenced to 20, 30 years, maybe even forever. As the days drag on, a thought starts to grow in your mind. What if I escaped? And that's when the game of intelligence begins. Prisoners have plenty of time to think, and some of them think big. They observe everything: the guards' schedules, the camera's blind spots, every tiny detail of the prison. For months, or even years, they devise plans so bold that they make even the best action movies look like child's play. Some jumped out of windows. Others dug impossible tunnels, tricked guards, were rescued by helicopters, and even used fake heads to make it seem like they were still sleeping while they escaped. And the scariest part? Many of them succeeded. Today, you're going to discover the 4 most unbelievable prison escapes in history, cases that left authorities stunned, and the entire world wondering how on earth they were even possible. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's start from number 4 and work our way to the most incredible escape of all. Number 4. The Alcatraz Escape, the fake heads, and the perfect plan. The Alcatraz Escape, the impossible plan that worked? Alcatraz, the place no one was ever supposed to escape from. Located in the middle of San Francisco Bay, this prison was more than just a collection of cells and high walls. It was a symbol of absolute confinement. Surrounded by freezing waters, deadly currents, and sharks, at least that's what the guards like to say, Alcatraz became known as the Rock. The message was clear: if you come in here, you only leave in a coffin. But in 1962, 3 prisoners dared to defy the impossible. Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin knew that the only way out wasn't to wait for a miracle. It was to create their own escape plan. And that's exactly what they did. Months of planning. Every detail mattered. Every great escape begins with careful observation. For weeks, they analyzed the guards' routines, identifying patrol schedules, the exact moments of inspections, and even the sounds of the prison at night. Every noise, every step, every sliver of light was a detail that could mean the difference between freedom and death. After thoroughly studying their surroundings, they began to act. Inside their cells, they improvised tools using whatever they could find. Small spoons stolen from the cafeteria, pieces of metal, and even rusty scraps were transformed into instruments to discreetly and silently dig holes behind the ventilation grates. The idea was simple in theory, but incredibly risky in execution. Dig a tunnel small enough to go unnoticed, but large enough for them to crawl through to the other side. And so, night after night, spoonful by spoonful of concrete was removed, and the tunnels began to take shape. But that wasn't enough. They had to make sure the guards never suspected a thing. That's when they came up with their stroke of genius. Fake heads. The trick that fooled everyone. If the guards looked into their cells and saw an empty pillow, their plan would be exposed immediately. So, they created fake heads made of soap, toilet paper, and real hair, which they discreetly stole from the prison's barbershop. The level of detail was so impressive that, under the dim cell lighting, the replicas looked like real, sleeping faces. On the night of the escape, the 3 placed their replicas on their pillows and simply walked out of their cells like ghosts, completely unnoticed. Now, the hardest part was about to begin. The deadly crossing. The ocean was their final obstacle. After crawling through the tunnels to an access point in the prison's service area, the fugitives reached their biggest challenge yet: the treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay. Here, they faced a deadly dilemma. If they weren't fast enough, they'd be caught. If they were careless, they'd drown. But they had already planned for this. Using hand-stitched raincoats, they built an improvised raft reinforced with fabric scraps found in forgotten corners of the cafeteria. And this wasn't just any raft. They had tested the idea beforehand, checking the material's buoyancy inside the prison itself. Every little detail had been thought through. They knew they couldn't simply jump into the water. The tides were a crucial factor. If they left at the wrong time, they'd be dragged away and likely freeze to death before reaching land. So, they carefully calculated the exact moment, using the tide and the moonlight to guide their escape. The mystery that endures to this day: did they make it, The next morning, the guards entered the cells and saw the prisoners sleeping peacefully, or so it seemed. When they took a closer look, they discovered the fake heads and went into a panic. Alcatraz had been defeated. The big question, however, remains unanswered to this day. Did they really escape? The FBI told the press that the three men had most likely drowned. However, no bodies were ever found, nor was there any trace of their improvised raft. Over the years, several mysterious clues have surfaced, leaving open the possibility that they successfully escaped. To begin with, just one day after the escape, a strange phone call was made to a lawyer in San Francisco. The caller claimed to be John Anglin and wanted to negotiate his surrender. When the lawyer refused, the call was abruptly cut off. Was it a prank or a real plea for help? But things get even stranger. For years, the Anglin brothers' mother received anonymous postcards and mysterious flowers on Mother's Day. And at her funeral, two tall women, heavily made up, were seen watching the ceremony. But they vanished before anyone could identify them. Disguises, perhaps? Additionally, witnesses reported seeing the Anglin brothers in Florida and Georgia. And in 1989, two bearded men showed up at their father's funeral, observed the body for a moment, and left without speaking to anyone. Coincidence? Or a silent reunion of fugitives with their past? And now for the most shocking detail. In 2015, a photo surfaced, supposedly taken in Brazil in 1975. It allegedly showed John and Clarence living peacefully. Facial recognition experts analyzed the image and concluded that the resemblance was highly probable. Could the brothers have escaped to Brazil and lived in peace for decades? To top it all off, an anonymous letter from 2013, attributed to John Anglin, claimed that Frank Morris had died in 2005, Clarence in 2011, and that John himself was battling cancer. He had lived in hiding all these years but wanted to surrender in exchange for medical treatment. The FBI analyzed the handwriting and DNA from the letter, but the results were inconclusive. So, the mystery remains. Did they survive or not? Are these clues just false hopes or evidence of one of the most successful escape plans of all time? To this day, this story divides opinions and sparks curiosity around the world. After all, sometimes reality can be even more incredible than fiction. Number 3. The Great Escape from Stalag Luft. 3. Tunnels, disguises, and a race against time. During World War II, one of the darkest periods in history, a group of Allied prisoners decided they would not simply wait for the worst inside Stalag Luft 3, a prisoner of war camp heavily guarded by Nazi soldiers. They were determined to do the impossible, escape the Nazi fortress by digging massive tunnels, in a top-secret operation that seemed straight out of a movie. The idea started to take shape when the prisoners noticed that, despite the intense surveillance, there were weak points in the camp structure. The soil in some areas was softer, and if they worked carefully, they could dig without the guards noticing. But there was a major problem. How to hide the removed soil? How could they ensure the plan wouldn't be discovered before it was completed? That's when the ingenuity of the prisoners came into play. More than 600 men took part in the operation. A true team effort. They created 3 secret tunnels, named Tom, Dick, and Harry, digging them with the most improbable tools. Spoons stolen from the cafeteria, pieces of wood, and anything else that could be used without drawing suspicion. While some men dug, others discreetly disposed of the dirt, hiding handfuls of soil inside their pants and scattering it across the camp during casual walks in the yard. But the escape plan didn't stop there. The prisoners also forged fake documents, improvised Nazi uniforms, and even crafted replicas of civilian clothes to disguise themselves once they got out. Every little detail was carefully planned. They created oil lamps to light the tunnels, built makeshift ventilation systems, and even installed wooden rails to transport the soil more efficiently. After months of relentless digging, Tunnel Harry was finally ready for the escape on the night of March 24th to 25th, 1944. It was the perfect opportunity. 200 prisoners were ready to flee. However, the plan started going wrong from the very beginning. The big mistake that cost many their freedom. As the first prisoners crawled through the tunnel, they quickly realized a major problem. The tunnel exit was not hidden in the forest as planned, but instead opened into an exposed area covered in snow. This meant that each person who left behind visible footprints, something that, sooner or later, would raise suspicion. The escape continued quietly for a few hours until, when the 77th prisoner was about to exit, a Nazi guard noticed unusual movement on the ground and sounded the alarm. Within seconds, chaos erupted throughout the camp. The remaining prisoners desperately tried to flee, but they were captured before they could even reach the exit. Of the 76 men who escaped, only 3 achieved total freedom. The remaining escapees were hunted down over the following days in a relentless manhunt led by the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police. Hitler's orders were clear: capture or eliminate the fugitives. The cruel fate of the captured. When Hitler learned about the escape, he was furious and decided to make an example out of the prisoners to prevent any future attempts. Defying international laws of war, he ordered the summary execution of 50 recaptured prisoners. They were taken in small groups to remote locations, where they were brutally murdered by the Gestapo under the false claim that they had been killed while attempting to escape. It was a cold and calculated massacre that shocked the world when the truth came to light. The remaining 23 recaptured prisoners suffered a slightly less cruel fate, but were still severely punished. They were sent to concentration camps, where many endured torture and inhumane conditions. The only 3 prisoners who truly managed to escape were Per Bergsland and Jens Müller, who successfully fled to Sweden, and Bram van der Stok, who made his way to Spain. They were the only ones who lived to tell the story of how the escape happened and how they managed to survive. The legacy of the Great Escape. Despite the tragic outcome for most of the fugitives, the Stalag Luft III escape remains one of the most astonishing stories of resilience and ingenuity during World War II. It showcased the courage of the prisoners, who, despite facing almost impossible odds, were able to create and execute an incredibly sophisticated escape plan. The escape was so legendary that it inspired the classic film The Great Escape, 1963, starring Steve McQueen. Additionally, after the war, many of the Nazi officers responsible for the executions were tried and convicted of war crimes. To this day, Tunnel Harry remains a symbol of determination, teamwork, and courage in times of despair. The Stalag Luft III camp has been transformed into a museum, where visitors can see part of the original tunnel and learn about this incredible escape story. Even in the face of a cruel enemy, these men proved that the will to be free is stronger than any fence, any guard, or any wall.